Hi everybody, it's Angelia. Welcome back to Read and Reread. Today I have some shelf shamers. I walked amongst my bookcases and I pulled out some books that I have had for years, maybe even decades, and I have never read them. And these are not books that I need to unhaul. There's books that I have sent away because I had them for a while and I realized I just wasn't going to read them or not reread them or whatever. These are books that I don't have any plans to unhaul. I still think maybe I'm going to read them, but for various reasons that I will attempt to justify or explain or peruse, I just haven't read these books. And I'm going to go in order from the most recent ones to the ones that have been around the longest. And so for the purposes of this little exercise, I said the book had to have been here at least 5 years unread. And so these are books that have survived multiple unhauls and moves. There was this big giant move in the winter of 2020 where I just gave away a ton of things. And so these have carted around with me from place to place, and they just sit there reproaching me from the shelves. So let's take a look and see what Angelia has not read. All right, so starting with the most recent. And I can't explain any of these really, but so first we have this book, Her Body and Other Parties, Stories by Carmen Maria Machado. At least twice a year, I see this in somebody's list of recommendations, or it's mentioned by somebody. I know it's supposed to be really good, and there's even a great story about how I acquired this book, because I got this book several years ago. I guess it would have to be when it was new, because I went to a library conference, Texas Library Association, and Stephen went too. We attended a session on the Texas Eliot list, which is a list put out of recommendations each year for adult readers. And the Texas Library Association has all different age levels of recommendations, and the most famous is the Bluebonnet list for elementary students, but they do have all these other lists too. So we went to the meeting of the Texas Eliot list because it looked really cool, because they were going to have a panel of some of the authors from that year's selections. And so we went to this session, and when we got there, every chair was set up with a stack of books on it. And we found out that everyone on the committee receives hundreds and hundreds of books each year. It's kind of like for your consideration at the Oscars. The publishers send out these books, and they read through them, and they eventually settle on the recommendation list of maybe about 20 titles. So they have all of these extra books, and they can donate them, put them in a personal library. If they work at an actual library, they can put them into their collection, but they're just like so many. So it was kind of like door prizes. They had a stack of books on each chair, and then everybody came in and got all excited, and people were trading because they already had this book and that book. So this was one of the books in my stack. And I was excited because I saw some good reviews of it. I was like, oh yeah. And then I put it in the shelf, and here it still sits today. And I am a reader of short stories. Why haven't I even ever opened this book? I can't explain this. And then now I'm excited all over again that I have it. But when am I going to read it? Am I going to read it soon? Next year? Ever? Okay. So this is item of shame number 1. Then another one of about the same vintage is Homegoing by, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing this author's name right, Yaa Gyasi. But look, she's back here judging me from the back cover and wondering why I have not read her book. And again, I got this book. It was one time when I had a gift card to Barnes & Noble, and they had, those tables where it's like buy 2, get 1 free. And I bought some books, and I don't remember what the other ones were, but this one, I was excited. It's like, oh yeah, this is supposed to be really good. And I bought it, and I brought it home, and I have never read it. I've almost read it a bunch of times. It's almost gone on trips because I was like, oh, it's not very thick. It's not very heavy. It even almost got unhauled once because I was like, well, maybe I'm never going to read it. And then I was like, then I felt guilty because it's supposed to be so good. Why have I not read it? Somebody help me. Now, we're going to go back a little bit further back in time. This is, I don't know how many years ago this was. This is at least 10 or 15 years ago. And I don't read a ton of nonfiction, but I do read a few each year. And at one point I thought I just really needed to have this book, Will in the World, How Shakespeare Became Shakespeare by Stephen Greenblatt, who I believe is a pretty notable scholar. The editor of the Norton Shakespeare. Okay, so I do like Shakespeare. And I guess I must have heard a great review of this book, and I thought this would be so fascinating. And I kept putting it on my TBR list for several years, and then I finally admitted I wasn't going to read it. And honestly, I don't know if I ever will read it, but I'm also going to keep it because I like the idea of it, and I like how it looks, and I like the thought that maybe I am going to read it. But really, I think what I want to do is to go back into reading Shakespeare again, because I used to read Shakespeare and plays in general a lot, and then I kind of stopped. I don't know why. So I think rather than motivating me to read this book, it's motivated me to read some plays by Shakespeare. But I'm not going to get rid of it because I like it, even though I didn't read it. All right, now we're moving further back. This book, I don't know when we got this particular copy, but that's not showing up too well. George Eliot, The Mill on the Floss. Now, I love Middlemarch, and I really like Silas Marner, and I might have read something else as well, and my husband likes George Eliot also, but I'm pretty sure neither of us has ever read Mill on the Floss. One problem is it's very thick and looks kind of imposing. It has an immensely boring title. It has a 2-sentence blurb that seems like a major spoiler on the inside, and I just don't have any faith that it's going to be live up to my expectations. I want it to be as good as Middlemarch, and I feel like it won't be because people don't talk about it as much. So somebody tell me if I should read Mill on the Floss, because here it is, taking up space, looking handsome, and nobody's reading it. Now, moving on. We're going farther back in time. Now, this one, I couldn't remember if I got this book in the 80s or the 90s, but I found a clue. I found a tiny little abraded leftover of a price tag from Half Price Books, which dates it into the 90s, probably the early 90s, because I didn't live near a Half Price Books in the 80s. But the 80s is when I discovered Wilkie Collins. I had a friend in graduate school. I was an English graduate student, English department, you know what I mean. Anyway, one of my friends in the program, based on books we were talking about that we liked, she said, oh, have you read Wilkie Collins? And at that point I had not. So she said, oh, my favorite is No Name. I loved No Name. I loved The Moonstone. I loved The Woman in White. And then somewhere, I guess, a little bit later on, I found a copy of Armadale at Half Price Books, and I bought it. And I'm sure I was very excited. And then I never read it. Part of the problem is I don't understand the cover. It looks like they're on a ship, and there is sort of a Grim Reaper figure, and then a woman that looks like she's reaching for a pair of dice. So somewhere I got the impression that this was like some kind of seafaring tale, which I don't think that it is, because when I'm looking at the back, it says that it is an ingeniously plotted tale of mystery and intrigue, centering on the terrible destiny of two characters who are both named Alan Armadale. Though warned by his father of the consequences attendant upon any friendship with his namesake, Alan Armadale, calling himself Ozias Midwinter. Okay, that's worth reading the book right there, that there's somebody who goes by a pseudonym Ozias Midwinter. He gains the confidence and affection of the man whom fate has determined should inherit the Armadale estates. Both fall victim to the beautiful, evil Lydia Gwilt, and the suspenseful story moves surely and inexorably to its chilling conclusion. Why on earth have I not read this? Like, I want to, like, turn the video off and start reading this right now, because it sounds really good. Maybe this will appear in my next TBR, because now I'm excited. And I can't explain why would I not read this book by an author that I have not hit any duds with yet. All right, we're rolling it back, guys. We are actually rolling it back now to the 80s. And I know that I bought this book at a library book sale when I was probably, I don't think I was even out of my teens. And it is the short novels of Colette. Now, I believe that when I bought this book, my only thing to go on here was that I thought the cover was cool. I had a vague notion that this author was a well-known French author from the early 20th century. I did not know if she was literary or just popular at the time, but I just, it has these cool fonts, and I just thought it was kind of neat, and so I bought it. And it's got this great photo on the back. And I still don't really know anything. I mean, I looked her up. I read a little about her. A very colorful character in her personal life. I saw that a movie was made a few years ago with Keira Knightley playing the role. I still don't really know anything about the literary merit of these stories. And honestly, nothing is really drawing me to give them a shot, but I will not get rid of the book because I like the appearance of the book on my shelf, and I might decide that I want to read it. A lot of this is just based on, if I don't feel strongly that I'm not going to read it, then I want to keep it, because I have unhauled books before that later I go to the shelf, I'll think, oh, I have that, and I don't have it anymore. So I'm a reluctant unhauler. All right, I have one more book to present. And I'm sure there are more examples lurking in these shelves, and I might find them when I have to take them out and pack for an upcoming move. But my last one is the oldest one, and I have had this one since I was a kid. And I think I've either never read it or I might have DNF'd it, but it would have been when I was like 10 years old. Because I can kind of feel like maybe I would start this book and then just bail on it due to it not being as good as its predecessor. And that is Little Men by Louisa May Alcott. And of course, I'm a fan of Little Women. I've read it many times. And then I have this lovely volume that has color plates. And here's the worst part. When we moved this last time, I discovered that I had 2 copies of this edition of Little Men on my shelf, and I didn't know it was 2 of the same thing because one of them had a dust jacket and the other one did not. And it looked different. And I thought I just had 2 funky old copies, and when I examined it closer, I had 2 of the exact same 1947 edition of Little Men. And so I kept the one that was in the better condition and let the other one go. And like I said, I probably attempted this book when I was a kid, and then it didn't really stick with me, and I'm not really that interested in it now. If I had time and I was in a Little Women mood, I'm going to read Little Women again. Probably not going to read Little Men. But every now and then I have like this kind of nostalgia mood where I want to read a really old-fashioned book, and so then maybe I do want to read it because it has familiar characters. So I'm not going to get rid of it, and plus it has all these nice illustrations, and I like the object. Sometimes that's my problem, is the object itself is what I like, and I'm not that into reading it. Other times I don't care if it was written on, a pile of CVS receipts. I'm so excited that author released something new, I'm going to read it however it looks. So anyway, that is it for today on my walk of shame through my bookcases with things that I can't fully explain why I've never read. So if you have a vote for the thing in this pile that I most ought to read, or that I should just not bother, let me know in the comments. And like and subscribe if you have never done so. Thanks, and have a great day. Bye-bye.